So happy to have my guest with me today, Lara Lavi, who is such a multi-talented, multitasking person. But I want to start with Laura's first single in 20 years. We're going to hear her cover of Joni Mitchell's The River.
Coming on Christmas, they're cutting down trees, they're putting up reindeer, singing songs of joy and peace. Oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on, but it don't snow here. You know, it stays pretty green. I'm gonna make a lot of money, then I'm gonna quit this crazy, crazy scene. Oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on. I wish I had a river so high I could teach my feet to fly. Oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on.
Lara, that is such a great single. I love the arrangement. Do you want to talk about the fact that your husband and your son are playing guitar in that? That is really incredible.
Well, we're a very musical family. That would be an understatement. I've always been a right and left brain person, music and now film, but also, academics, all the different things that go into becoming an attorney. But the greatest joy in my life is that I married my bass player from my band, the Lara Lavi band. And we produced one child, Cameron Lavi Jones, who is an extraordinary talent, both as a musical artist, but also as a singer-songwriter, as a producer, as an engineer. He's 22. He's already top in his field, working nationally, and just an incredible talent. He plays many, many instruments. My husband was his first teacher, but then he went on to work with some amazing people. And I had taken such a long break from my career. The fellow playing cello in the music video is Phil Peterson, who is a multi-Grammy, multi-platinum, multi-gold record producer and string arranger, everyone from Pink to Taylor Swift to Portugal the Man and A$AP Rocky, just a long list of people,
Wow.
Macintosh, all these people. And in the course of, I started out as the attorney for Phil, and then he did some production work for Cameron's band, King Youngblood. And then there was sort of an intervention of those three, and they came to me, and it was very tearful and emotional, and said, "You can't sit on this anymore. You have put your life on hold for too long. So figure it out. Let us know what you're doing, and we will support you." So
Wow.
I thought about it, and growing up, Joni Mitchell, for any female singer-songwriter, is sort of the quintessential artist, right?
Absolutely.
I thought, well, I've got hundreds of songs that I've written and recorded over the years. Some I've released and many I have not. And I thought, before I start putting out original material, I should put out something that people know, know this song. And women in particular, it's kind of a theme song. And we put it out during the holidays. We recorded it, me, Phil, Maurice, my husband, Cameron, my son, the audio and the video with Matt Clifford, the video director, all at the same time in Phil's theater studio.
Oh.
So that scene that you see in the back with the snow, and if you look at the video, and the four of us sitting and standing, and then we threw a blue filter over the whole thing. It's having that ability in production and in music to be able to look at a piece and quickly create something. And then Phil is a big believer in don't think about it, just get it out, go, go, go. And, I used to ponder everything and belabor and have fear. And these guys have just absolutely just said, go, do it. And the result was this song and video. And I was scared at my age, I wasn't going to be able to hit the high notes, and we did crack it down a half a step just to give me a little safety zone. But those high notes in the chorus were not easy. And had to brace myself for them. And oh my God, Joni Mitchell is such an incredible talent. And to be able to honor her with singing that particular song, which is how we've all been feeling during COVID, I think at one point or another, just wish we could just skate away on a river.
Right.
I just thought this was the story of that song.
Wow, that's great. And so you're doing that now after taking a break from recording because you're actually an attorney who has a law practice that works with musicians and filmmakers and the creatives in this business. And I picture you when I was going through all of your social media stuff, I thought this must be someone who has like 20 tabs open on her computer. There's just so much going on there. Right and left brain, as you say, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm always getting yelled at by my husband that I have too many tabs open on my computer and that it's going to crash. I've already spent money to just make this computer fit my life versus the other way around, just get it rehauled so it will do what I want. And yeah, I mean, at the end of a 2 a.m. day, most days, because this is so much work involved in managing a law firm and trying to put not just my career together, but my son's career with King Youngblood. And also I managed, Macintosh, Keisha Day, Shaprice, Jaden, Blake. I managed 7 other projects. Wow. And I'm the general head of business affairs for Pink House Production, Lauren Lacroix's company, who's an incredible tour de force. She's kind of like a young Octavia Spencer, Viola Davis, and I'm sort of the wind beneath her young wings. And just there's like a flurry of talented people and incredible projects, and then the straight legal work that helps pay for a lot of things, and it is exhausting.
But at some point, you decided I need to do something for myself. I need to return back to that singer-songwriter thing. You have this great thing on your Twitter feed. If someone told me when I was in my early 30s that I would be in this place now, I just want to climb down off the volcano and sing, write, record, play, and simply focus on everything I need to express musically. I think that's so incredible.
Well, I will tell you that over the years, I mean, I don't know if people know, and they should know, they better know who Brandi Carlile is. She's an incredible Americana singer-songwriter who came up as a teenager and then is a tour de force in both the Americana and the country market. She's incredible, multi-Grammy winner. She's from our region. As a young woman in her teens, her first recording studio was ours with my husband. And I remember back in the day, and at that point I had definitely put myself on hold because I was the attorney for the Muckleshoot tribe, and then I had my own practice, and then I was serving the needs of other artists, and everything felt like, I was looking at the world through the filter of that's for them now and not for me. I've let go of what is authentic to me. Mm-hmm. And I remember especially looking through the studio window at Brandi and Maurice working and thinking, I'm just on another planet now. I can see them, but I can't get through this glass to be where I belong. And I had that feeling for so long. And then, there's a movie, Dante's Inferno, that's about these people that have to rescue the grandma. And they're all up on this blowing up volcano and they're up there, and they eventually come to the realization that they have to leave her there. And she says that, leave me here to die in the fumes of the toxic volcano and go save yourselves. And honestly, that metaphor has stuck with me for so long. Go save yourselves. Mm-hmm. And I even have it in a lyric where there's a line in Solace that goes, I am lost, go and save yourself. Mm-hmm. It's like that prominent in my psyche. And eventually I got to a point, especially as my son got older, and his career takes up a tremendous amount of time because he's being produced by the same people who produce the Foo Fighters, and it's a big deal, you know, and there's not a moment where there's not something to do for him. But eventually I got to a point where I kept looking at these piles of hard drives that I have. You know, here's another one right here. There's just like tons of them. And this collection of music was just like burning a hole in my brain. And I started to feel like I'm not walking the talk of what I tell my artists. You know, I tell my artists to go do it, go be in it, you know, and I know I'm talented. I don't walk around going, I don't have any talent. Of course I have talent, but talent is like 1% of this, you know, it's drive and determination and confidence and ability and focus. And you have to make it a priority. And I had always let everybody else be the priority while I waited on the volcano.
Oh, isn't that the truth? I mean, you started, you know, music has been such a big part of your life since you were tiny, right? You were one of these musical prodigies. Is that right?
I guess so. You know, I mean, there were young people, men and women, who I think were more the traditional prodigy. They were like immersed in violin or piano on the classical end. I was playing very serious classical piano and then very serious classical violin, played in the Pittsburgh Youth Symphony and all that kind of stuff. Toward my main teacher was a professor at Carnegie Mellon, Ralph Zitterbart. I got performance coaching from, at the time, the Pittsburgh Symphony's artistic director, Andre Previn, you know, just these incredible things. And I competed and I did well. I had a fear of memorizing music, which I think the solution was for me to sit on the manuscript while I was competing, which sounds ridiculous, but it worked.
What, you absorbed it through your body or something?
But I was a poet, actually. And so my strength as a singer-songwriter wasn't really that I could like play guitar prolifically or something. It was, I had a very painful childhood that nobody knew about because we were very quiet about what I was dealing with. And I would translate in lyric melody the environment, which I still do. I live in a duality of that all the time. But that translation lent itself to some really great poetry. And that poetry then translated into what we now know as an Americana genre.
Wow. Wow. You know, another thing you mentioned in one of your Twitter in a blog post or a Twitter post that really struck me was your remark that I've spent way too much time trying to be enough for ghosts, no more. Yeah, well, I grew up in a household with an abusive father, and nobody knew it, how bad it was. And I was determined as I emerged from that not to let it define me. But to be able to comment on it with my music. But like many people, I'm not unique in this. Many people have dealt with that feeling of never enough. Nothing is ever enough. I've amassed a ridiculous amount of degrees and accomplishments. And I could go, woohoo, that makes me awesome. But really what they were was, is this enough? Is this good enough? You know, and when you're dealing with a father who eventually disowned me, you know, then he no longer existed. Actually, he was a ghost at that point. He finally disowned me fully. I guess didn't get me at all. I married my husband, who's African American. We had a beautiful mixed race child. You know, my father said this child is an abomination. You know, that was sort of the end because the child is like the most precious, amazing, beautiful existence on the planet for me. And so Laura, that just the end of it. But there's still this voice in the head that the ghost is saying never enough, never enough. And that's the voice that lots of years of therapy and lots of songwriting and just finally getting to a point at 60 years old, which is a long time to take to figure it out, you know, to say, okay, no, I'm just going to be me. Thanks. I think that's true for a lot of people. I've talked to people who finally, when their parents, you know, pass, that they finally feel like, oh, I can talk about this. I can acknowledge it. I can write about this. I talk to writers who don't want to write certain things because they're afraid their 90-year-old mother will read something, even though if you write something, you don't have to share it. But it's the fact that that person could have some criticism of it or would not be pleased by it. That's very inhibiting.
Yeah, I agree. And what's interesting is that in the last month, I was digging around in the back of the hall closet, the place where everything goes that you don't want to throw away, but you're just not looking at. And I found the 8mm projector and camera and a bunch of reels of 8mm film that my father must have taken when I was 1 year old. And my son and I set it all up. We were so excited. And I started watching this film, which was really documenting my first year, that my father must have taken. And at that time, he seemed so incredibly loving towards me and my mother and just his life as a young father. And obviously the camera, just like social media now, lies about reality, but there was this look that seemed real. And I must have thought as a baby that this was real, right? And maybe it was real then. But it struck me just incredibly, like what you think is happening in your very little beginning and where the world goes as you grow up. It had a profound effect on me looking at this video. Well, they're not videos; they're actually 8mm film. And in fact, you can on February 19th, you'll be able to see a little bit of it because my son used some of it for a lyric video for his new song, Too Late, Too Soon. And the lyric video behind it, we just took the camera and we the projector and we projected on one of those old school pull-up screens, and then we filmed it. So it looks like you're just watching 8mm film. We didn't even have to process it, nothing.
That sounds great.
And it was just profound. Like when we were doing it, my husband was there, my son, his girlfriend, the four of us just did this because it's COVID. So we're doing as much as we can at home. And it was a cool project and worth checking out. But it was profound to watch that video and realize what evolved from that time of hope and love. And I can either let the negative parts of it taint me forever and I walk around bitter, or I can translate it into art. And whatever timing that is, because it's now, it was back when I was doing this in the late 80s and 90s too, but it's really now. I'm a way better writer and singer than I was then, in my view. I definitely found my voice. That just, it's an incredible feeling to emerge from all that and know there was some interesting, loving origins. They went bad, but put it in a song, like translate it into some art. That's kind of how my brain goes.
How do you feel that you approach songwriting now at 60 than you might have done at 30? It sounds like the processing that you're just describing is a big part of that. Do you think your songs are deeper or better at 60 now?
I think that, well, there's an interesting thing going on because this first album that I'm going to start releasing singles in the beginning of March is called Mermaid Under a Desert Moon, and it's the Lost Session. So it's 1987 to 2001, I think. Wow. And except that I did throw in a couple new ones just because I couldn't help it myself. But
bonus tracks, right?
I don't care, whatever. But in any event, I think that I'm a better writer now, but there were some gems that never got out. And I think that the difference between how I'm creating now and then was, first of all, I think I understand the craft of songwriting now. I've done it. I've been coaching other people. I can listen. I'm part of the commercial market. I get, what you need to do to make a song commercially successful. But lyrically, I've lived enough to be, introspective without self-indulgent, to stay poetic more. And I think I was more self-indulgent when I was younger. But I also think that youth is wasted on the young.
No, I know it.
Who knows what you know now compared to then, So I was still processing when I was younger, and I'm still processing now, but I'm processing in a more proficient way.
Yeah. And also, I think when you're a parent, you are in the position of what maybe your parents were going through as adults with young children. So, right?
I agree. It's also, parenting is the most selfless thing you can do if you're doing it right. Mm-hmm. But it's wrong if you do it so selfless that you lose yourself, where you just start living your life through your child. So it's always a balancing act. But for me, it's sort of like I forgive my parents for their extremely bad behavior, both of them. But I can't forget. I can't carry it around with me like a big bucket of pain, because that's just counterproductive and it's too heavy to carry around. But I definitely feel that I've been able to translate it in a way, like the song Mermaid Under a Desert Moon, the chorus goes, "Why must we fix what never was broken, yet resist what is shattered and stands on the edge? Promises made, we still leave unspoken as we listen for the unwritten tune. It's the song of the mermaid under a desert moon." So it's that feeling beautiful. Of displaced. And why do we keep trying to peck at our pain and what we think we need to fix? Honestly, we just need to get on with it.
Listen, on kind of a different note, you and I grew up in the analog years, and we're now in the digital years. And for some of us who have not been as maybe professionally engaged as you have been all these decades, some of us come up out of the tunnel and it's like everything is different. How do you think the music business, the recording business, what you're trying to do now has changed from when you first started? I mean, I think of the gatekeepers that aren't around anymore. You don't have to, you can produce something independently. You don't have to, convince some guy at a record label to, produce your record or something like that. But how do you think things have changed in your lifetime?
Well, I think some things have changed and some things haven't. Like, you're sitting there with a microphone and headphones and a laptop and a flat screen and a mixer and a producer, and you've got a bunch of technology that's taking your voice and sending it through a system to record it and then send it out to the universe. That has not really changed. The medium and the technology has changed to make it easier, but that part hasn't changed. In the music industry, fundamentally, I don't care what anyone says, and I know this is true. I'll stand by this in any panel, any discussion. A great song rules. A great song with a great delivery rules even more. So at the end of the day, whether it's film, music, whatever, but we're focused on music here. Music has to be good, or it's disposable. So what's happened in this dawn of digital distribution and encoding music and streaming it is that distribution has become accessible to anyone. So you can make a song of people clapping their hands and grunting for 35 minutes, and you can put it out there. Now, who's going to buy that? I don't know, but you can do it without a filter. But if you want to actually get to an audience, the filters are actually weirder now because we're dependent on, for example, Spotify's editorial team to put your song in a playlist to get to millions of people. You can't get that unless you have the right distributor or label to access that company. So the rules haven't really changed. They've just sort of, the gatekeepers have changed. And, we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to sort algorithms and how's the best way to get the numbers up. We're always talking about the numbers. For me personally, at this stage, I'm sure I would like more people to listen to these songs. But honestly, at this point, for me personally, if I don't get them out, I'm not going to have closure. So I have to do that. But I'm still doing marketing. There's some great companies like Rise.la that help with organic reach and all that. But for my son, who's a better example at 22 years old, we have a 12-person team working his record independently. We may as well be a label. And that sophistication of having come up in the industry allows us to harness the tools that are available now. But fundamentally, the rules of the road are, if you can play, you can stay, and a great song should win if you can get it to the right people. Right. That's my view.
Are you frustrated that the oldies kind of dominate, wherever I go, I hear the music that we heard in high school, there seems to be less new music out there, maybe because we don't have the radio stations that are always kind of, looking for the next new sound, that there's always this dependence on music from the 70s and 80s that you don't get the newer artists out there in the popular culture, I would say.
Well, that we do. We just get them in a different place. You have to discover them in different ways. YouTube is where a lot of new music is discovered. To some degree, the streaming places like Pandora and Apple Music and stuff, there's an incredible amount of curation going on. But on the radio is an antiquated medium. I mean, it's still used, and particularly in urban music, it's funneling through a lot of music. But if an older audience is who's flicking on the actual FM dial when they're driving, then the music is going to serve that audience. That purpose is to sell ads, right? So you can see the targeted demographic. But if you go to a hip hop station like Power 90 in New York or something, you're going to hear what's going on in hip hop now. People would break an arm and give it to you to if you're in hip hop to get on some of these stations. So it really depends on the genre and the demographic, but like in Middle America and in different places in the country, we've seen more Hispanic music come up into the FM dial because we have a larger population of Latinos, and so and music that's sung in Spanish, and so the FM dial is a reflection of who would actually turn the radio on. It's not a reflection of what music is out there. I would say that Spotify and Apple, their playlists, which are diverse and gigantic, it's sort of like, I mean, there's no shortage of music. And that's why these playlists are so important, because they lump in genres or moods or music to work out to, or music to contemplate your life to, or music to pull your socks up with, or whatever. There's like something for everyone. And that's where the discovery process is. So if you're not paying attention to those streaming services, you're actually, unfortunately, because I've just literally in the last couple of years forced myself to embrace it. And I've discovered a lot of music. Like, I'm a huge fan of this recent Taylor Swift album. I loved her as a country artist. I didn't quite get the youth-driven pop thing she was doing, although I understood what she needed to do to express herself that way. But she is an incredible lyricist. She's a great vocalist, and she's a magnificent lyricist, and she's just turned 30. So she's looking at the world through this Americana eye now. And when I play that album, Spotify will turn me on to similar albums. And to my shock the other day, Lara Lavi singing The River popped up on the playlist of that playlist.
Yay!
And I almost ran into a telephone pole,
That's
that's the power of this digital discovery process now. It's there. It's just you have to learn how to use it. Interesting.
I want to ask you, with your whole, we've been talking about your going back to your recording career and getting back into creating music and recording music. What do you have some advice for people who are in their own self-discovery journeys to reinvention or rediscovering old passions or things like that? I know you have a lot of wisdom to share. I'd love to know what you think.
Sure. Well, first of all, different areas of expression are more forgiving with age. So the visual media of painting and sculpture really doesn't care how old you are. So just do it, right? The visual presentation of acting, for example, there are parts at all ages because film, TV, and live theater reflect us, and we are all ages, right? If you want to be a director, if you want to be an editor, you may need to go get some education just to learn how to do some of the technical things of it. But if you want to do it, you can do it. If you want to be a musician, it depends on the genre. Like if you wanted to do gangster hip hop, at 60, you might look a little pathetic. That's a fairly youth-driven market. But what I've been told by my publicity team, Ever Kipp and Janine Brenier, is that Americana music really doesn't care how old you are. It cares what you're talking about, and you're going to have a lot more to say as you get older. I think that the advice that I would give is to look deeply into what is it that, as corny as this sounds, what is it that makes you authentic? And what is it that's holding you back from allowing that authenticity? Usually it's fear. Usually it's competing with ghosts. Usually it's some excuse you gave all through all those years of why you didn't do it. And if you come to the conclusion that you didn't do it for very good reasons, A, you had to feed your family, or B, you loved it, but you didn't love it that much, or whatever it is, then that's okay too. But if you find yourself feeling compelled to do what you meant to do, whether it's start a new business, which certainly during COVID people are doing right and left these days, right. Or start painting or writing or whatever it is, the world is your oyster, because the digital distribution world has allowed us an easier way to take expression and convey it to others. So you don't need to worry about a grand scale. You do need to worry about whether or not you're actually serious or not. And I do believe that no matter what age you are, if you're going to take on something that you actually want other people to pay attention to, you have to do it with intent. And for me, the hardest thing for me is everybody else's agendas get in the way. And I love them all and I want them to succeed. And that's where I feel like I have to fight the feeling of being left on the volcano.
Wow. I think that's a great way to kind of wrap this up, because that's perfect. And, you know, I love the message that there's so many different ways we can express ourselves that are not age dependent. I was very inspired by the 40-year-old version. I don't know if you've seen that film by Rada Blanc.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, where she not only, she plays herself as a 40-year-old, you know, kind of failing playwright who turns herself into a hip-hop artist who has something to say because she's 40. And yet the meta version of that is she's now a filmmaker and an actor. So it was incredibly inspiring. If you haven't seen that yet, it's amazing.
Yeah, I hear you. You know, years ago, when I was running Wide Awake in Toronto, I realized that the visual medium of music video was essential to market artists. And so I had to dive in initially as a producer and eventually as a director, having no background in film whatsoever, like none, but having a good understanding of what things need to look like, because I'd always been a photographer. Even in high school, I was doing black and white photography and printing myself and all that. And now I'm a producer, director. You know, I actually shot a video for Cameron's, my son's band in May due to COVID. We actually shot it on my iPhone 10X. It came out incredible. It won awards. It was awesome. And it was sort of like, to answer your question even further, like, I could have said, I don't do that. I could have defined myself by I can't. And at some point I just looked up and I went, well, yeah, I can. You know, it's going to be a little hard. I might have to figure some stuff out and get the right people around me. But once you get to that place in your head where you're saying I can, then it's about walking that talk and getting to the place of action. And I am the biggest believer in visualize, actualize. And I think that's, at any age, essential to keep us vibrant. And I encourage that to anyone listening to this right now.
My gosh, that's amazing. You are so inspiring. Lara Lavi.
I wanted to mention something to you.
Yes.
You had asked me about the song Terry's Garden.
Yes.
And that is actually, we didn't talk about it, but Terry's Garden is actually the song that was the mental breakthrough for me years and years ago. Because when I was growing up, my mother, who raised us speaking in metaphors, it took a while to figure out what the hell she was talking about. But she always used to say to me and my little sister Terry, you have to go in your own garden and cultivate it. And I didn't fully understand what that meant until my sister had a huge mental health crisis right after law school, right after clerking in the Second Circuit and getting this big fancy job with this big fancy law firm. And she was working 1 billion hours a week and she just had a complete breakdown from it. And while she was recovering from that, I wrote the song Terry's Garden. And that song actually is about opening the gate and walking into your own garden and living in it. The books, the poems, the birds singing, the cats hiding behind the trees, the whatever it is, but there's only one thing missing from Terry's garden. Open the gate, little sister, and walk on in. And honestly, that's what I hope for everyone. I hope for everyone to open their gate and walk in their own garden, because we're only here for a minute and your garden is waiting for you. You just have to open the gate.
Amazing. Amazing. And we're going to go out with Terry's garden. So there's a beautiful explanation. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
In Terry's garden, there are books of poems and lazy cats with deep green eyes, and violet beds in velvet moss, and cool breezes. In Terry's garden, there is pain and there is wisdom in ancient eyes. They hide behind